Welcome to the Redeeming Stories podcast. I'm Julie M. Lane. One of the questions I've been asking myself throughout my whole healing journey is this: what happens after survival? For many women who've experienced trauma and abuse, survival becomes a way of life. We learn to adapt, we learn to protect ourselves, we become incredibly capable. But thriving is something entirely different. Thriving requires hope. It requires believing that the future can look different than the past. Today, I'm joined by Michelle Dean, financial services professional, author, speaker, and founder of Women Helping Other Women, an organization dedicated to helping women achieve their dreams through education, inspiration, and support. Michelle's own story includes surviving years of childhood abuse. Like many survivors, we spent years focused on simply getting through life before realizing that healing also meant learning how to dream again. In today's conversation, we'll talk about fear, faith, resilience, financial confidence, and what it truly means to move from surviving to thriving. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you. You've made some really great points in that introduction.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. You shared that after years of childhood abuse, life became about survival rather than pursuing your dreams. When did you first realize that surviving wasn't the same as living?
When I was 42 years old, I went to lunch with my ex husband's sister. Her and I were very close. And she asked me a simple question: what does Michelle want? And it was like my whole world exploded the minute those words came out of her mouth, because in 42 years of living, no one had ever asked me that before. And instinctively, I just felt like I knew what I wanted, and that was my switch. It turned on that I realized I can't do this survival stuff anymore. It's time to get up and move forward and go on with life. It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced.
I know that I've had not that specific moment, but I've had little words come across where I hear a phrase and it's not even being directed towards me. And it's like, oh, I step back and I go, I hadn't thought of it that way. Or
Yeah,
I hadn't realized that I was already doing something or hadn't been doing something. That's we get in that survival mode.
yeah, yeah. And surviving is just simply existing day to day and get through each day as they go. And you do that for so long, you don't know any different.
Do you find with surviving, I know I have for me, but everyone's different. Surviving really delineates any kind of emotion. You're
Oh,
just
yeah.
going through the motion.
Yeah, absolutely. By the time I had that epiphany in my life where I knew I was surviving, if somebody asked me, and this happened to me often, "How do you feel?" I couldn't even answer the question because I had no idea. I couldn't describe feeling. I didn't know what I was feeling. It was like feelings just didn't exist anymore.
I remember, my parents would ask me, "How are you?" When I talked to them, and I would say, "I'm okay." And one day, many, many years later, they asked me that question. I said, "I'm fine." And I recognized the shift, and I don't even know where fine came from. It just came out of my mouth, realizing I was in a better place.
I don't know about you, but I spent a huge amount of my time, if somebody said something or something happened around me and it triggered, the only thing I really knew how to feel or respond was to cry.
Oh,
And I
wow.
and I would have the feeling to cry a lot, but I always stuffed it. I always did everything I could to not allow myself to cry. And I was talking to a friend that I had just met on the phone one day, and somehow or another she could tell I was doing that. And she said, "Michelle, just stop it. Just cry." And I spent an hour on the phone with her, and she didn't hang up. She stayed with me on the phone, and I just cried and cried. and cried. And it was the first time I ever really let it out. And it was painful, but necessary and very overwhelming.
It's ironic that you share that. I haven't cried, I think, since 2003. And in that time period, I've been through a lot of trauma, and both of my parents have passed away, and I haven't cried. And I feel that urge to cry, and I talked to my therapist about it, but there is so much fear in allowing myself to cry. I still won't. And, you know, like your friend, I'm working with my therapist just to allow myself to cry, but I'm not sure when that's going to happen.
Yeah. There have been times when I have that overwhelming feeling, and not so much anymore, but especially way back when I would literally go in the bathroom, turn on the shower, and sit on the toilet and cry because I didn't want anybody to know, but I wanted to give myself permission to cry. So I would just go sit in the bathroom with the shower running and cry. There's something magical about crying. I have no explanation for it.
No, and you're right, because I can remember in the past feeling so much better after I cried. But now I'm just terrified to do so. So I'm hoping eventually I will be able to. She'll talk to us about how trauma, how your trauma has taken away the ability to dream at one point. Had experienced that as well. So let's talk a little bit about how trauma affects dreaming.
So to me, dreaming is when you're thinking about and imagining all the wonderful things you're going to do in your life. When I was a little girl, I was a dreamer. My mom always used to tell me to get my head out of the clouds. I was always told to stop dreaming in class because I was a dreamer. And nothing in the world could stop me from dreaming about all these wonderful things I was going to do. And then the abuse happens. And when it got time for me to go back to that dream, I didn't know how because I no longer had any confidence. I no longer believed I could do anything. So, what's the point of dreaming? It's like every time I thought about something I wanted to do, there was always those 50 million voices of, oh, you can't do that. Oh, that's never going to happen. Oh, you're not smart enough. Or you're whatever, those stupid voices that you say in your head. So I had to, and then there was the point of I didn't know what I wanted. What was my dream? I have no idea. So I felt like I had to start over from scratch. And for me, the first step was learning about me and learning about what my strengths were and learning about what I was good at. And I took a million and one strength assessments, Clifton Strength Finders, DISC assessments, all those different kinds of things to learn about me. And then when I started figuring those things out and learning what my strengths were, then the confidence started to come and then I could start dreaming again. It was baby steps. It didn't happen overnight.
I can relate to that. Um, I think that because of the careers I've had, I've always known who I was, but I wouldn't allow myself to validate myself. And I really was dependent on the validation of others. Um, those compliments that did come in, I would just, grab them as fast as I can and held on to them because someone was seeing me as I thought who I was, who I wanted to be, and someone else was catching a glimpse of that person.
Yeah, I can totally relate with that.
Yeah. Um, Much of our healing requires us to face fear, because I talked about, especially for me with crying. What fears did you have to overcome, or which ones are you still facing?
You know, I when I started on my journey of healing, I was absolutely positively afraid of everything. I was afraid of talking. I was afraid of being around people I didn't know. There was nothing in this world that could encourage me to do something I've never done before. So doing anything new or outside of my comfort zone, forget it. So the first really strong distinctive fear I remember facing was public speaking. and I was leading a support group for women who had been sexually abused. And I made my pastor get up in church and speak about when I was going to start another group. And he said, "This needs to come from you. Women are going to relate more to you." And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm not getting up there on that stage." And something, well, I know what it was. God just basically beat me over the head and said, "You need to deal with this because he's right. You need to be the one getting up there." So I signed up for a speech class at the local community college because I didn't know of any other way to make myself face that fear. And the very first day I was supposed to give a speech, literally, I was absolutely positively terrified. My body was sick and trembling, and I can't even explain how terrified I was. I remember going to the class in total anxiety and looking at the teacher going, "You got to let me go first. You got to let me go first. I have to go. I have to get this done. I have to get this over with. You got to let." She's like, "Okay, okay, I'll let you go first. Calm down." And it I just felt like I had to get it over with. So I got up and I gave my speech, and I don't remember anything about the speech. I don't remember any response from the audience. The only thing I remember about the speech was the teacher used to give constructive criticism after you got done and tell you what was good or what you should change and those kinds of things. And the first thing she said was, "I loved the way Michelle grabbed onto the podium and leaned into the audience and captured the audience." And I just died laughing. And she goes, "Why are you laughing?" And I said, "Pff, I was holding on to the podium to keep from falling over." But that was the first memory I really have of facing a fear. And it's not been easy. I've still struggled with that every now and then, getting up in front of an audience or whatever. But people who know the Michelle today, when I talk about this fear, they don't believe it. They're like, "You talk at conferences, you do this, you do that. What do you mean you were afraid to speak?" I don't believe that. So it does get easier, but it takes time.
Absolutely. I know that people are taken aback when they learn things about me because I hide things so well. Um, and my fear, Michelle, is just the opposite. I have been speaking in front of hundreds of people and performing in front of thousands of people for both my careers. That doesn't bother me. It's the small groups that fear is where my fear rests. It's getting together with anything more than maybe 3 people, and then I become very, very quiet and reserved, and I don't speak very much. Is that still a struggle for you as well?
You know, After I took that speech class, I took some other classes at a local community college, and I remember them breaking us up into small groups to talk about readings that we were doing in this English class I was taking. And we'd break up into the small group and we'd be sitting there, and it's like nobody would speak up, nobody would ask, nobody would take charge, nobody would, conversation. It drove me absolutely crazy. So I always ended up being the person that started the conversation. And so I realized that small groups, no, didn't bother me. Either that or it was just God's way of saying, "I'm going to put you in places that make you uncomfortable because I'm going to make you do what I want you to do." And he accomplished his goal. So small groups are not hard for me.
Okay. And if I had a task in a small group, I'd be good. But if it was just time to sit down with a group of people for social time, I'm out the door. I'm heading right back home.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point. So the fear for me was the quiet. That's why I took over and spoke up because the quiet was fearful. And recently, and it's been a long time since I've been triggered, but recently I went to a friend of mine's workshop that she was doing. And one of the exercises that she did was she had us break up into groups of two. And she wanted to explain to us how the body reacts when we're not being heard. And so the exercise was you having this conversation and both of you are listening to one another and engaging with one another. And then you do it again and the other person doesn't listen to you. They put their phone in front of them. They don't pay attention, nor you. And that triggered me huge. And I have not been triggered like that in a really long time. And that's been just maybe a year ago. And it was so bad. I wanted to get up and leave the event. So the fact of speaking and not being heard or somebody not paying attention to what I'm trying to say is probably my fear and my trigger at this point that I'm still dealing with.
Wow. No. No, thank you for sharing that. I think sometimes it's hard to talk about our fears because we think in our heads, they're not going to understand. They're not going to get why this is so hard for me because it seems like such a common, everyday social um, task that adults do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I don't know, and maybe that just goes back from the days when I was being abused and nobody saw the signs or nobody listened to my verbal or my nonverbal signs. And so still today, that's the one thing that's the hardest for me to deal with is when I'm trying to speak and I'm not feeling heard. It just brings out anger, frustration, all those horrible feelings.
You use the word thriving quite a bit, and you even brought it up, before we got on to record today. How would you describe the difference between surviving and thriving?
So to me, thriving is growing. It's moving forward. It's doing something different and it's success. And I think that's the key word. And a lot of people, they have this warped sense of what success is. And my definition of success is baby steps. If you've moved forward and you've accomplished one little baby step, that's success. You may not have reached the total goal yet, but still. And surviving is just simply getting up every day and repeating the exact same things. No growth. You're just making it through your day. You're not doing anything different. You're not growing. You're not working toward a goal. Stagnant.
Do you think that in thriving, there's an emotional component that comes along with it? Or do we first need to just recognize those baby steps and hope that that emotional component will come alongside it?
Yeah, the emotions come later, at least in my experience. I had to make myself take the baby steps, uh, which was part of the facing my fears for all of the different things I wanted to accomplish. I didn't have, even still today when I accomplish something or when I do something that's outside of my comfort zone or different, it's not easy to pat yourself on the back and, you know, share your own success or I don't even know how to put it into words. It's like when I teach the class facing your fear, I want to emphasize that when you take that baby step, you have to have a way to success to what's the word I'm looking for? To celebrate. That's the word I'm looking for. To celebrate that success. So whether it's, I don't know, you go buy yourself something fancy, you go get your hair done, you call a friend and say, "Hey, I did this." Whatever that is, there has to be some sort of success to celebrate what you accomplished. And over time, the emotions will come along.
I was thinking about how do we learn to celebrate as you were talking, and I'm thinking back, you know, that's something that is role modeled and taught through celebrating us when we're quite little and we see celebrations and we're engaged in those celebrations. And yet, when that either doesn't occur or there is invalidation that's so consistent that we don't learn how to celebrate ourselves because others have taken that away from us.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that is my goal with WOW, the nonprofit,
Hmm.
that it's a group of women that we will celebrate your success. And it doesn't have to be a big win, it just has to be a baby step. Because the more you celebrate that, and feel good and somebody says, "Hey, great job," the more likely you are to take the next step.
True.
Without the celebration,
Hmm.
you're likely gonna stop before you end up where you want to be.
Yeah, and for me, I think it would be allowing myself to be celebrated. That's still really hard for me. I don't like um, a whole lot of public. It's hard for me to open a gift in front of somebody. Even my own daughters and their families at Christmas time when we're gift opening, it's really, really hard for me to do that. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of courage to open that gift.
That sounds like a fear that needs to be faced.
It is. It's one of many, that my healing journey is long, and, I will continue on it, but it is. It's hard, and sometimes I hear this term of imposter syndrome that is going around quite a bit, not always maybe being used appropriately in the sense of it's not accurate, um and so people will tell me, "Oh, you've got imposter syndrome." And I think in my head, "Oh, you don't know my story." It's far more than just that. My struggle to celebrate my own successes.
Yeah. That's not something that you learn to do overnight. It's a definitely a journey. And I think WOW has been a real game changer for me to be able to do that.
Mhm,
Having other women that don't have the abuse in their past and celebrating their success is secondhand nature to them.
mhm,
And having them, give me kudos when I do something, it's like, oh, well, okay. All right. Thank you. It's weird
yeah,
at first, but it just
it
becomes
is.
more common when it
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah, and with you being, geographically not too far away from, me, I'm hoping to somehow engage with WOW, in the near future to hopefully find that group of women that I can start to allow myself to take what in my mind is a bit of a risk, to put myself out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand completely.
I know, yeah, I know you do, and it's wonderful when we find like kind, and at the same time, my heart goes out because um, feel so sad for those that have experienced what I have.
Yeah.
You're spending your professional life helping people prepare for retirement and financial security. How have you seen financial confidence become part of a woman's overall healing and sense of independence?
Well, very early on in my career, I struggled with getting my foot in the door in the financial services and finding my niche and where my place was and blah, blah. A lot of men in the financial industry, very uncomfortable when I first started. And going to a conference, I heard an attorney say, if you work within your passion, you will be successful. Of course, my passion has always been working with women. So I decided to make the change to work primarily with women. And I did a lot of research. And in the financial industry, I saw this a lot. I heard the biggest reason why financial advisors get fired is because a husband passes away and the wife has no relationship with that advisor, so they move to someone else. And the biggest reason why that is because male financial advisors tend to meet with the men and don't even include the woman. Because then, if you look at statistics, women have a fear when it comes to money. And the fear is basically because they don't know or they don't understand. They weren't taught when they were young, whatever. They just feel like finances is overwhelming and stressful and confusing. So I really began to insist anytime I did a review or a consultation, if it was a man, I always made him include the wife. And the amazing response I got from women doing that just blew me away. It was like the first time they'd ever been heard or included. And so just breaking it down and helping them feel comfortable being in the conversation. It doesn't have to be complicated. I don't have to talk over your head. I think a lot of advisors, if you go meet with a financial advisor, they talk in language that's way above your head. They don't bring it down so that the average person can understand the conversation that they're having. So I always try to figure out where the woman is in her understanding of finances by asking questions and then just having conversations like you and I are doing right now. Only the conversation is about money. And I have really seen, I mean, literally of a book of business of probably 500 clients, probably 400 to 450 are women.
No, I think that that financial piece for women is so true. And I think, you and I've talked about our ages and growing up when our parents were Depression era babies and they just didn't talk about finances. And so trying to figure it out on my own or rely on a husband to tell me what to do. It's just now that I'm really starting to get this sense of how to manage my finances and how to maintain my budget because I don't have someone else saying that they're going to take care of that. And now I'm learning how to do it for the first time.
Good for you. Kudos to you for doing that because it's important. You need to know.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's baby steps, and you can start at any time.
Yep. Yep. And I hear a lot of times where when I sit down with female clients and have those initial conversations and they understand how uncomplicated it really can be. It's like, "Oh my god, I wish I would have known this when I was 20," or "I wish I would have heard when I was 20," or "Oh my gosh, why now?" Yeah, so trying to have those same conversations with younger clients has been harder because they just don't wanna hear it right now.
Yeah. I think I impressed enough on my daughters, the concept of being very money wise and conscious, being both mom and dad to them, raising them on my own, keeping them in their private Christian school system that they were in so they didn't have to change schools, put a huge financial drain on my resources. And but I talked to them about it and said, hey, we just don't have the cash to do that right now, or we need to wait a week until I get paid again. And so that was enough to let them into my world. And now as adults, I see them very conscientious about savings and managing their funds.
And I'm glad to hear that. There have been a few exceptions to the rule where I have some clients that are young and they tell me, my parents told me to do this or my parents taught me how to do this. And I want to call their parents and praise them and thank them because just not a lot of parents do that with their kids.
So I wish my parents had very
Yeah.
much so. Michelle, earlier you mentioned WOW, women helping other women. Talk a little bit more about how WOW encourages education, inspiration, and support, and why you believe community is so important to help women reclaim their lives and their dreams.
Yeah. So I started WOW because I needed WOW. When I got in the financial industry, I felt alone. I felt I had no other community of support, and I had grown so much in my healing journey that I needed that community. So I started it basically for me, for my own personal needs. And the first ladies' night out I had, there were over 50 ladies there, which told me other ladies felt the same way I did. And I think just by nature, women are different than men. Men are very independent by nature. They're very strong-willed. Women, they're used to being the wife and the mother and having that job, so to speak. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this very well, but they've always been part of a community. They want to be part of somebody else. They don't want to be alone. And so we do events where if I have a woman such as yourself that has a skill or a knowledge, we would bring her in as a guest to do a ladies' night out and just talk briefly about what you do, that kind of thing. They're not networking events per se. Is that saying that networking doesn't happen? No, it happens, but it's not a chamber mixer. We're not there to grow our business. We're there to connect with other women. And it's been amazing because over the years since I've been doing this, I've met so many different women that do so many different things that I don't know how to do. So that's where women helping other women comes into play because it's not about me. It's not about Michelle Dean. It's about what skill or what knowledge can you give, or what strength can you share, or what guidance can you give? And we do that with one another. And it's just been amazing.
Thank you for sharing, Michelle. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Yes. One is I hope, I'd like to share my wrote my story, my journey from surviving to thriving. And recently I just started a new magazine. It's a digital magazine. I don't know anybody else that's done that. And so I just kind of want to share women's stories and get it out into the world. And so far I've had really warm welcome of the first digital magazine that I sent out. And I want this to be monthly, and I will share different women's stories and resources for women who have had some sort of trauma or abuse in their life and they've got a place to go to get that support. Maybe you can't go to a WOW event because you're too far away, but that doesn't mean you can't gather that support from a digital magazine.
Wonderful, Michelle. Make sure you share the link with us to the magazine so that we can get the word out there as well.
So we'll do that.
Absolutely. So, as I reflect on the conversation with Michelle today, I keep coming back to one simple question. What dreams has survival asked us to set aside? Trauma has a way of narrowing our world. It teaches us to focus on getting through the day, protecting ourselves, and managing whatever comes next. Those are important skills, but they were never meant to become the whole story. At Redeem Thyself, I often talk about redemption as returning to truth. It is a part of that truth, remembering that God created each of us with gifts, purpose, and dreams that existed long before trauma entered our lives. And at Seven Petals, I've experienced something similar in returning to music after more than 30 years away. It hasn't been simply about playing the harp again. It was about reclaiming a part of myself that had been waiting patiently beneath years of survival. Michelle reminds us that thriving doesn't happen overnight. It happens one step, one baby step, one decision at a time, one act of courage at a time, one dream rediscovered at a time. Michelle, thank you for sharing your story, your faith, and your heart for helping women believe that there truly is life beyond survival. Until next time, this is Julie M. Lane, and this is the Redeeming Stories podcast.